Aloha, everybody. How's you guys' day out there? Everybody doing well? I hope so. I hope you guys are doing good. I'm having a pretty good day myself. Getting close to the weekend here. I hope everybody's getting ready for the weekend and gearing up to hang out with some family. I just thought I'd do a little podcast today. I know I'm kind of videoing this one right here, but you can catch it on my podcast, which is the True Life Podcast. I wanted to talk today about the class and caste system. I was reading a book called Ward 8. And in that book, they talk about the differences in systems. And it just got me thinking about all the division and about how we as a society are kind of missing one point. And I wanted to read you this quick little passage to get your guys' opinion on what you think, if this is actually true or not. So this is taken from a book written in like 1950 about Alfred North Whitehead. And in this passage, he's talking about the different systems we have as Americans versus the English system. So here we go. He explained the graft all through society. In the labor unions, the unions expecting to be sold out by their elected agents who openly justify their having done so on the score of policy. Then in business, finance, journalism, it is an enveloping climate. We in England, said Whitehead, have a bad system inherited from medieval feudalism, which oughtn't not to work, but which as a matter of fact does work rather well. Whereas you, here in America, have an excellent system which ought to work very well, but does, as a matter of fact, work rather badly. Your system, said I, keeps the individual of the class in the class, but by doing provides it with able leaders, which gradually elevates the class as a whole. Ours allows the individual to rise, but by so doing deprives the class of its natural leaders, and so tends to leave the class as a whole down. That is the major point I wanted to get at. You know, there's a lot, it's really easy just to like blame other people for things, but don't you guys think, let me ask you, don't you think this, whether it's white people or black people or Mexican people or any people, like regardless of what color you are, isn't it true that people who become leaders in that community, they rise to a certain level? And at least in the United States, it seems to me that regardless of class, if a leader gets to a certain level, they leave that group behind. They leave the very group that got them there behind. And I think that that's why you have so much poverty, is that if you want, in America, if you want to rise to the very top and be a top-ranked politician, or you want to be a top journalist, whatever you want to be in the country, you can do that. But you have to be willing to forego all your values. Like you have to sell out the very people you claim to lead in order to be successful. That's a hard pill to swallow, right? But if you think about it, it's pretty true. Like think about all the organizers or all the leaders that make it to a certain level, and then all of a sudden they switch their ideas on stuff. Look, okay, let's just take the presidents, for example. You got Biden and Trump. Neither of those people care about like working people. Like look at their families. Like Biden's family is so corrupt, and so is Trump's family. His family is so corrupt. Biden's family took money from the Ukraine. Trump's family gives all our money to Israel. But it goes further than that. Like let's take an example from, like, look at Barack Obama. He's another guy. He came out and he talked all about this promise and all this stuff. However, when he made it to the top, you know, he sold out the very people he claimed to lead. But you could even take it to like a sports example. Like if you look at, you look at Kaepernick, like that guy could be the greatest civil rights leader we've ever had. But you can't make claims about slavery if you're going to have shoes made in China. It just seems to me that like you can make it to the very top, but you have to be willing to sell out your class. I think the best unexample of that, one of the most faithful people is probably Dave Chappelle, right? Like that guy, I think he embodied it perfectly. Like he could have been welcomed with open arms and had the greatest life ever. Maybe he has it now, but remember when he had his own special, like on Comedy Central, and then they offered him, I don't know, some bazillion dollars, and he told him to pound sand? He just bailed the show. Like, if you listen to interviews with that guy, he's so incredibly admirable. I was watching this interview with him. I think it was on the Actor Studio, and he was talking about he was given a chance to make tons of money and give up his values, and he chose to keep his values. I think those are the leaders that are rare, and it just points out that, I mean, it kind of points out some uncomfortable truths. Would you, as a person, be willing to give up all these ideas that you think are important for a set amount of money? Like, you want to say no, right? Like, you want to be like, no, I wouldn't sell out my family. I wouldn't sell out my community. Like, you think that until someone writes a big check and puts it in front of you. It's like, George, would you be willing to denounce all the people you work with and just say that the community, like, these people are lazy and it's unfixable? And I say, no, I would never say that. And then someone cuts me a big check and is like, here's $1 million, George. Do you say it now? And I'm like, no way, man. These people are not lazy and this community is definitely worth fixing. And then they write a bigger check and they're like, all right. How about $5 million, George? And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Wait, who did you want me to see is lazy again? Which group did you want me to say is lazy? You know, at a certain amount of money, your values change. And that's a very difficult truth to think about. And I think if you're honest with yourself, you can say that you wouldn't be like that. But the truth is, if you do some hard thinking, you probably have a price tag on you, right? The reason I bring all that up is I think I'm a little bit windy right now. I think that's where we're at. Like, it's so easy to blame people. And I think that things are so crazy right now because both sides, like, all people see our world as not working the way in which we want it to work. And both sides want it to be better, but no one is willing to ask or, more importantly, deal with the tough questions. And that is, I think the tough questions are, like, it's not fair. It's never going to be fair. And the people making the policy are trying. Imagine sitting at the very top and then thinking to yourself, how do I help the people on the bottom without changing my way of life? Like, if you're a person that makes policy, if you're a person that has the authority to change the rules, you want to help the people on the bottom because you feel bad for them, but you don't want to stop the amount of money you're getting. You know, and like, that to me is the stalemate right there. Right? You can't, that's like trying to move the shadow without moving the statue. You can't do it. And the truth is, I think we're all a little bit guilty of that. You know, if think about it this way, let's say you busted your ass building a company. Let's say you've struggled and scratched and you've made your way to, like, middle class where you're making 150 or 200 grand a year. You know, you could send your kid to a private school. Like, things are going pretty good. They're not great, but they're going pretty good. And then all of a sudden, and by all of a sudden, I mean, like, in a year, people are like, we got to tear down this fucking economy. We got to tear it down. That's not fair. And you think to yourself, like, yeah, they're kind of right. Like, it's fucking not fair. But I worked my fucking ass off to get here. I don't want to tear it down now. How about we tear it down in like 10 years? You know, the people on the top, they made it. They don't want to tear the economy down. But the people on the bottom, dude, they're ready to burn it fucking down because it's not fair. And so I think both sides. I think if you as a human, or if you as a loving, caring person, are just willing to have a little bit of empathy, you can see both sides. The trick is, where do we find solutions to make it better? And that's what nobody's talking about. Anybody can focus on the problem, but the real issue is you got to spend time on the solutions, right? I don't know what the solutions are. I mean, I think that there could be more emphasis on, I would like to say that it shouldn't be, our governments and our economy shouldn't be centered around money, but I mean, how do you say that? You got to eat. But if, like, here's the problem. Like, we define success on what we do. How many people do you know, like, when you ask them, so what do you do? The first thing they say is their job. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm self-employed. You know what I do? I built this company. Like, I get it. That's one thing you do. But aren't you also a father? Aren't you also a mother? Are you a teacher also? What about a cousin? What about a brother? Like, there's all these other roles that you play in life, but the one we tend to think about as most important is the job that we have. I think that one way out of this whole mess is we have to start redefining what we think is important. Are you willing to have a little bit less? And if the world could have more, it's kind of a slippery slope, right? And then we get back to thinking about, if you live in a big house somewhere, you want to give up your big house. I don't want to give up where I'm at. But the only way you can change the future is if you change your life. That's what I think. I think another possible solution that seems small but could possibly be huge is just changing our language. Right? Changing the words you use, I think, can fundamentally change the way you see the world. And the way you speak to other people may be a way to help them see the world differently. Right? Like, you could argue that, like, COVID-19, while it's a virus, in a lot of ways it's the same as a computer virus. Like, COVID-19 is the first virus that's spread by TV, it seems like to me. Do you think that's true? Is that possible? And if it is possible, then can't we engineer a new virus to spread a better way of living? Like, think about if you had Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity on the exact same page, if they were on the same page and talking about solutions, like, hey, we should stop giving all our money to, like, foreign countries and just build infrastructure in the United States, right? The truth is, if we just stop giving a large portion of our money away in the United States, we could pay reparations. We could pay off student loans. We could pay for all kids to go to preschool. Instead, we give money to, like, the war machine. We take money from poor people in rich countries and give it to rich people in poor countries. Like, why is that not on every fucking news channel? That should be the debate, right? Like, that should be the whole debate. Hey, you guys all pay tax. What do you want to do with this money? Let's pay off some student loans. Let's write off some debt, right? Let's help some people create businesses. Let's create a better life for all of us in our community. And I talk to some people that I think are really intelligent. They don't all agree with me, and they tell me the reason we need to go and support other countries and give all this money is to make democracy in other parts of the world. And I mean, I can understand that point of view, but I look at it like this. If you're on an airplane and that plane is about to crash, the first thing, like, and all, like, the breathing apparatuses fall from the sky, and it's all chaos, we're gonna die. When it's like that, the stewardesses tell you, or the flight attendants, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, the flight attendants tell you, the first thing you do is put your own mask on first, right? You can't help out anybody until you put your own mask on. I think that we as a country could help out a lot of countries, but we should put our mask on first. There's a lot of people in our country that need our help. And I think that's a great place to start. Why is it that we can rebuild schools in Afghanistan 10 times, but people in Michigan can't have clean drinking water? Like, if someone ran on that platform, it would be a landslide, right? So you gotta start asking yourself, like, well, yeah, why don't we do that? Well, the reason we don't do that is because there's no money in that for the government to do it. I don't think, right? Like, why don't we do that? We have tons of money. We pay tons of taxes, but all our tax money goes to just, it seems like more fraud. I think that I'm hopeful that after this election, we can be a little bit more civil, but I'm also hopeful that we can change our ways. I'm hopeful that we can see what's happening now as a virus that should be treated. Like the way we're treating each other is a huge problem. Family versus family, like COVID versus non-COVID. Like, it's so sad to me. I heard another interesting point today too, that I was talking with a friend of mine and we were talking about corruption and leadership and money and kind of all the same things that I'm talking to you about right now. And they said to me, George, look, man, these are great ideas, but you're never going to root out the corruption at the top. And I'm like, well, why not? And he says, well, look, if you think about the internet, and this is what he was telling me. He says, George, if you think about the internet, in some ways it started out very liberating, but it's become very constrictive. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty true. But that doesn't mean the internet hasn't freed us from a lot of things. It doesn't mean the internet's not changing us. Like the one thing you can't do is put the genie back in the bottle, and you can't turn the internet off. And like, look at the way the internet is changing education. It may not seem like it, but I bet if you're honest with yourself, I think kids today are going to be smarter than us. Like, they have access to so much more information. And when I talk to my cousins, my little cousins, or my nieces and my nephews, and my daughter and her kids in school, like, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. So I'm hopeful that can help out and that can be different. So, anyways, those are some of the thoughts I had today. And just want to say I love you guys, man. I hope you're all treating each other well. And the weekend's coming up. I hope you got plans. And I think that's all I got for today. But I love you guys. Aloha.